Life, liberty, and happiness. The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Where did this come from? Where did this new idea come from that makes the United States different than any of the other colonies of England? What did the United States do that was different? They broke away and established their own country. They broke free from elite rule. And where did they get the idea from? This is never talked about. Where did the idea come from? As if it just manifested out of nowhere. These people were escaping slaves, or serfs, as they call them. They were serfs, and they had no rights. They had no rights to hunt in the king's forest on penalty of death. They had no rights of anything. They were hit by taxes all the time. There's plenty of movies that testify to that. So when they got here, what did they see? They saw a lot of people here that were free, that had their own style of governance, self-governance, who didn't have anybody standing over their head. They could hunt anywhere, hunt, fish. They had beautiful gardens. They produced 67% of the food known in the world today. Perhaps this is why the real story of North American and South American Indians are never told. The real stories of them. Because it flies in the face of the idea that they were a bunch of savages and we had the right to kill them to make room for a superior people. Actually, it was just the opposite. A superior people had to move aside for the development of an inferior people who had a lot to learn, who had a lot to realize. The Indians realized their freedom, their responsibility to their community. They had a beautiful life here on North American continent. They knew how to harmonize with the rest of creation. All you need to do is look out at any of the places that are sanctuaries for the creatures and for the vegetation to be the way that they were created to be, the life that the Great Spirit intended for them. And you can see that all manner and species of birds, all manner and species of animals can live together harmoniously, and each of them will get what they need. There's no one of them taking over everything for themselves, as we see with the people. Actually, they should introduce legislation so that the animals and the plant kingdoms, the herbs, the natural herbs that the Creator put here, that they all have a right to life and clean water. They should have rights also in the Constitution. That's for a future time. And the rights of children to be able to be children. Anyway, so where did this idea of freedom come from? Which is what is on the ballot. Freedom or no freedom. Freedom or back to the old serf, slave, elite system of government. Globalists that want to control the world. Now they're not satisfied with just their own little kingdom and controlling all of that. Now they want entire countries. Now they want all the countries. So it's greed run amok. And then they have all their little minions and puppets running around doing their bidding, trying to get in the way of our freedom and our liberty. And so when the pilgrims landed and they saw a free people, hey, how come they get to run around hunting and stuff? We never did. You can see this in the old newspapers in Ely, Minnesota, Mischief Mining and whatever it was called. Mining, Mischief, and Marriage. That was the name of it. Put out by the Ely Miner, which is a paper that doesn't exist anymore. But the Ely Shopper is still putting out copies of excerpts from the old newspapers. So Ely became a town in 1888, and so the excerpts from the newspapers show you the progression of what happened. And that same progression happened all over. It happened in different ways in different places. But in Ely, and I suspect on the East Coast, the new people made friends with Indians, and they observed them in their ways, and a lot of this is recorded. And so in Ely, it's recorded when they had their 4th of July parade. Everybody got up at 6 a.m. and shot their guns off, and then all the contests would begin. Grease pole climbing, who could drill a hole the fastest, racing, foot racing, canoe racing, and all kinds of different events took place. And then there was a parade, and then at night there was a fireman's ball. And so during the parade, there would be the Sylvanian section, and they were the miners. And then there was the Finn section, and they were the loggers. And then there was the Indian section, and they were the local people who lived in the area. Indians before the white people came. And the Indian women, they took part in the festivities. They got to be in the canoe races and in the foot races. Now, Ely, and this is true of many of the Wild West towns. This is another thing they don't like to talk about. But the first women in were prostitutes, and they would always have a bar with their names above Monette, Babette, whatever their names were. And these were the founding mothers of the United States. And so they came in and they serviced the miners and the loggers. And then, once the men built houses and got saved up enough money, they would get a catalog and get a mail order bride. And they would send for brides from Europe. And then these were proper women. And so these women, they wore bustles and restricting corsets under their dresses. And so they couldn't take part in the foot races and in the canoe races because they even had to have special chairs to sit on because these big hoops would go up in the air and they had to be able to sit in a certain way because of the bustles. And so they couldn't really get into any of the festivities. And so then when the vote came up, the city fathers, now the town proper was founded by the miners, and then on the outskirts of the county around it were all the Finns settled. And so, what was I getting to here now? So the city fathers said, our women are not going to vote. They're ladies. They're too much ladies to vote for that. And the next newspaper came out and it said, and then women came out in droves to vote. And not only that, but they threw away their bustles and their corsets and they created a ladies' snowshoe club. And so all the women came out for their freedom. And so the miners, they had been brought here in chains for the king to mine. And the overseer of the mine could break into their house anytime and rape their wives, and they couldn't say anything. The carts in the mines were considered precious. They better not get dented. But men could die in the mines, and they would just send for more men. And so they were pretty abused and oppressed people. They had no rights. And when they saw the Indians in the woods having fun, fishing, hunting, living a good life. They wanted that. And when the white women saw the Indian women running around having a good time, they wanted that. And I imagine on the East Coast when the first white people came and met the Indians, they wanted that. They wanted all that good food. They wanted all that freedom for themselves. And the Iroquois Confederacy often met with Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and the like, and showed them how they conducted uh, their meetings, their councils, and they even attended some of the first congressional meetings that the fledgling United States set up, so that they could guide them on it, give them ideas, help them along, and this is said to be in the congressional records what happened. And so I wish that they would not forget about Indian people, because Indian people have just about now forgotten their ways. They have been oppressed for so long, so many generations, that they have now just about forgotten all of the things that they had. The freedom, the memory of freedom is within us, and we remember how it's supposed to be, and we know what's right and what's wrong. And some can call those things up, others cannot. Some can know in their heart, and and I think that that's what people want. And people are able to conduct this freedom. They're able to be responsible. They're able to show respect to everybody, the life that's in everybody, and to listen attentively and speak from their heart. You can't even conduct a government without speaking from your heart. If you're there for self interest, it's not going to work. It can't work. The people there have to be there because they see this vision that people need. They have to, number one, care about their people, their relatives, care about humanity, care about Mother Earth, the earth where we live and move and have our being is right here on this planet. And that's why we owe it to all living beings a sense of dignity, that they have every right to life, to be able to live the way the Creator intended for them to live. Otherwise, none of it can work. And so we need to go back and look at the speeches, and they've been recorded, the speeches of the old chiefs of long ago, and how they thought, and why things worked. You have to find how things work, the proper procedure in order to have this freedom. And because you're coming from a place where there had not been freedom, then there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. And like that one man said at the RNC their first convention, the beginning of their convention last night, a black man was talking, and he was talking about his grandfather and how his grandfather was uneducated and how far that they had come in 90 years from picking cotton in the field to being a congressman in a couple of generations, and that it was bad and it was full of racism and things when his grandfather was a young man, and how it's changed to the point where he could become a congressman. And so, yes, there's been progress. There's progress going on all the time. Things have changed, and things slowly change. And people have to remember back. The older generation has to share their experience of what happened to them and how they changed. And how, if I look at myself, I went to boarding school. This is where Indian children were taken from their parents and sent to boarding school to take the Indian out of them. Well, I went there 4 years from first grade through fourth grade. And so when I got out of there, and my mother had remarried to a farmer from southern Minnesota, and we went into the suburbs, the early first suburbs, I got freaked out because I was looking around, and where are the Indians? There's no Indians around here. And I made war. That was my response. And but I was in culture shock. I was going through a lot of stuff. But at the time, and then as I got older and began to realize a lot of different things, I never felt like I was a United States citizen, ever. I felt like I was a prisoner of war. I was more of a prisoner of war than I was a citizen. And always felt like that. I'm here, I have this foreign culture superimposed upon my culture, and next to obliterated my culture and the people I came from, and on our own land. And you know what? When Trump came on, I start paying attention big time. Because you know what? I knew he was a good man. I knew he had the heart for the people. I don't care what anybody says about him, what mainstream media says about him. It's not true. And so for the first time, I felt like, yes, I'm a native North American Indian, but I am also a United States citizen. And that's the first time I could say that. Because his heart goes out. Ami Rich.